Welcome to our podcast, This Life, the Chronicles of Autism Mums. I'm Alison Saraf, and I'm joined each week by amazing women who happen to have children on the spectrum. We talk about navigating the ups and downs of parenting kids with autism and how that affected us and our lives as women, professionals, and mothers. Strap in, grab some tissues. Sometimes you'll cry from empathy and others from laughter. Join us on our journey of this life. Welcome to today's episode, Sibling Rivalry. I'm Alison Saraf, and today I'm joined by Huma and Karina. Hello. Hello. Welcome. It's lovely to have you with us. So today we're going to be talking about siblings and sibling rivalry and about balancing our family's needs, how we do that as mothers, and what problems and challenges occur within those relationships, and how we balance the needs of our neurodiverse children within our family, and how we balance everyone's feelings. So we can start. So, Huma, you have 3 children.
Yes.
Okay. So, from the offset, tell us about that dynamic in your family with the 3 kids, and if there's any rivalry, and do you think that's kind of rivalry just from the fact that you've got 3 differently aged children, and that's a kind of natural thing, or do you think that the kind of autism comes in at some point and hits it a bit harder?
So my eldest son is on the autism spectrum. And
the first
one, yes, the first one. So my parenting experience was never typical. In a way, I guess it was, I would say, a blessing, because when I had my second one, it seemed much easier. But I noticed that, a lot of things that I would find difficult or impossible, like daily tasks with my eldest, would be really easy with my my middle one.
Yeah.
And so I was grateful for that. But as they were developing, they were growing up, and I really wanted them to have that loving bond, because selfishly, because I could see that my eldest was struggling socially, and I was hoping as a parent that a sibling will be like a friend to him,
right,
that will fill the need that is the missing. But because my eldest was still at that phase where he had difficulty controlling his emotions, so I could see that my youngest, my middle child, so they're 4 years apart, so I could see that he was very sweet-natured, but his personality was really affected by Hyder's. He'll tease him, or he'll be not that sensitive. I mean, not in a mean way, but that's just how he was. So I could see that Suleiman was developing this really defensive personality,
right,
at this young age, and he's a baby, and I was like, that was really.
It was not how you want. Like, no, it was not the relationship that you were kind of hoping for and expecting.
I was hoping, the older brother, the protective one, the loving, but that side was not coming out. And I was constantly the referee. And then I had my third child, Mariam, and they are 7 years apart. And I could see the same pattern with her. She was developing this really, because she's a tiny little thing, and then there's this boy who's 7 years older than her. So she's, as a baby, she developed this really defensive personality, to like by screaming or shouting or being aggressive. And I was like, I hope this is just a phase, and they eventually get over it. But I could see that the relationship was affected by the autism spectrum.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously they're older now.
Yes.
And how has that relationship kind of developed? Has it got better, and has it improved? Have they kind of grown up and kind of become more of a unit and a team, or are things still a little a little bit of a challenge. And they are in all families, I think. You know, if you've got neurotypical children, there's always going to be, especially I think with 3, because you've kind of got that middle, you know, you've got the middle child syndrome, you've got the firstborn, and then you've got the baby. But how do you balance their needs? You know, how do you balance, like, you know, maybe saying to Haida, you know, you need to cut this out a little bit because it's you know, how does that, is that a challenge for you?
It is a huge challenge because I feel that sometimes, I know he's not insensitive. It's just that, you know, if you give him information, oh, you have to be kind, you have to be caring, you have to be nice, it just flies out the window.
Right.
It's just like in the moment, whatever he's feeling in the moment, that's what happened. That is what will happen. And but now that they're older, Haider is 14, Suleiman is 10, so they have a much closer bond. And Suleiman worships him. He's like his older brother. He'll even defend him if it comes to defend him against us, the parents, that, oh, don't say this to Haider, he doesn't like it that way, don't touch his things. I was like, wow, look at you. So he's follows his brother around like anything. But the thing is that what I worry is that Haider has a very dominating personality, and Suleiman he gets suppressed. And I'm constantly, because I'm a middle child, so I constantly worry that I don't want this happening in my house, that and I could then my daughter is alienated because, oh, she's a girl and she's not accepted in that group. I was like, what do I do?
It's impossible.
Yeah.
So you haven't got a situation where the 2 youngest have kind of built an alliance together. You've got Suleiman, who's kind of gone towards, you know, kind of bonding with Haider.
They do. When Haider's not around, Suleiman will play with Mariam. But when he's around, he will ignore her out of loyalty and play with Haider.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh my God. So it's a constant struggle that, like.
Do you ever see Suleiman, your middle child, becoming a guide for Haider? Is that happening at all?
It is happening already.
Is it? How interesting is that?
Because I rely on him more, because I know if I give him an instruction, he will
follow through.
Because I tell him when we go out, I say, Suleiman, go keep an eye on Haider. Tell me what is he doing. And I'm like, that's one child I know he will report back that, oh mom, this happened or that happened. The other 2, they're like, oh, you can say whatever you want to, this is not happening. So
he's your little spy.
Yes.
He's your alliance really when you're out and about, so he can keep an eye on the situation. It's interesting. What about Karina, with your boys? So your boys are twins, and so that's a different dynamic again, because and one is on the spectrum and one is not on the spectrum. So what is your experience of any rivalry between them and kind of keeping the balance, because you don't have one that's older that's looking up to the other, or, you know, so obviously they're the same age, so they, you know, there should just be a kind of level between them, but obviously there isn't in some ways because of the, you know, the way that they have developed slightly differently. So tell us about your feelings on that, the sibling and the rivalry.
I think that in our case it's very interesting because they are twins and I have only the boys. You know, I don't have any other child. So Ricardo is the neurotypical and Rafael is the one with autism. So Ricardo had to bend to Rafael's needs since he was 3 years old when Rafael started the therapies. So what happened, it was like for him, that was the normal. You know, we go to therapies, we, you know, like autism, we always made autism part of our family. We never said bad things about autism or the negative side of autism. So Ricardo always saw autism as something normal. So when Rafael was like 3 years old, that he started with flapping and all the stimming, and he lost eye contact and everything. Then he came to me, he was only 3, and he would just say to him, you know, like, why are you doing this? stop doing this, stop flapping your hands, stop. And he was like trying to be his therapist, because this is what he was seeing at the therapy, you know, like, okay, I'm doing the same, you know, I'm helping my brother. But in his mind, it was something normal. So for him, we never had this conflict, because he was always supportive. He was always kind. And one day I remember when he was 6 years old, he said to me, you know, because in school children start to be more judgmental. And then he came to me and he said, Mom, is there anything wrong with Rafael? Because my friends are saying that there is something wrong. I don't think there is anything wrong. So he always saw him, okay, this is who he is. You know, and I know he doesn't speak. I know he has some, you know, sensory needs, but that's it. That's all, you know. I mean, for him, that was enough.
Does he ever get frustrated? Like,
No.
has that stage come that he's like, oh, why is he?
No, he doesn't. He came, but not in a frustration mode, because for us in our house, autism, it was like a normal part of our day. It was something like we never made like, oh, you know. So for him, it was like, okay. So he said, what did you tell your friends at school? I said, hold on, I'm gonna ask my mom and I'll get back to you.
The official line. What's our official line on this? I like it. Wise boy. Wise moves. And I think is a very interesting dynamic that is very indescribable outside of neurodiverse families, because for my girls, obviously I have Noah, who's in the middle, who's sandwiched between two neurotypical girls who are quite a force to be reckoned with, who adore him. My younger one, even, like, it's so funny, even with Noah. So I have a 13-year-old, and then I have Noah who's 11, and then I've got Lily who's 8. And Noah absolutely worships Maya, because she's always been the big sister. So she takes the role of the kind of matriarch if I'm not around and her dad's not around, and he relies on her. But Lily is quite a force to be reckoned with, and she is very on him, like always, in a good way. But you can see that he just worships Maya, the older one, but he knows that he has a little sister, and he's like, I'm not doing what you say. You know, if Maya would ask him, then he'll be like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. If this one asks, it's like, don't tell me what to do. I am older than you.
But Alison, do you think that with Lily, like, you know, sometimes she brings out things, like she challenges him to you know, sometimes when you don't want to do something, and then you confront that, and then you get better at it. I know I'm not explaining it right.
No, I know what you mean.
She brings
it's like putting him into uncomfortable situations that we wouldn't necessarily put him in ourselves. Yes, she does. She's quite a scrappy character. So she's very, you know, I think they both have very different relationships with him. But together, I think they complement him, and he does massively rely on them. The one thing that we're very conscious about, and I'm always very conscious of, is the balance. Because I know that when he was first diagnosed, we didn't have Lily, but we had Maya. And even though I was very conscious of still parenting Maya and giving her support and everything else, I don't think it's physically possible when you first get that diagnosis to be able to focus 500% on the child with the diagnosis. And I'm talking very, very honestly. And as much with every single will in the world, your focus is on helping the one with the autism. And actually, my mum said something very interesting to me. And my mum is probably my greatest support, aside from my family, my husband and everything else. And she understands, and she does her best to follow our family and kind of keep up with what's happening. And my eldest daughter, I wouldn't say struggled at school until she was probably 8 or 9 years old, but she really didn't particularly enjoy reading. It was a real effort for us to get her to do her homework and her schoolwork. And then all of a sudden, you know, and we tried a lot to encourage her and to, you know, to get her to where we thought that she should be, to motivate herself to do her schoolwork. And then all of a sudden, when she went to middle school, she moved from kind of 5th grade into middle school. She just turned into a very highly motivated school workaholic. You know, she just flipped. But my mum, because my mum was talking to me about it a couple of weeks ago, and she said to me, do you know what? I always remember Maya struggling. She's doing so well now. We were celebrating something that had happened at school. And she said, I wonder whether or not you were so focused on Noah when she was going through, you know, in those younger years, that maybe she didn't feel, or she couldn't, or she didn't feel supported enough to do that. And I was like, what? How could you know, and I didn't say, oh, how could you possibly say that? Because I know whatever my mum says, it comes from a good place. You know, it comes from I'm not criticizing, but maybe that's why. Yeah. And I never thought about it like that. And I hope that's kind of not the case. But I've never seen any rivalry between my children. I've never seen any frustration from my girls. You know, if we can't do something with him, or, you know, if we, you know, there's certain things that we probably wouldn't do, or we live our lives maybe a little bit differently to how we would if he was neurotypical.
Do you think Maya's the sort who would like not say anything if her needs are not being met? Like, she will not push you that, oh, mom, what about me? You, like Mariam would, like, she would say that, oh, my needs are not being met. Yeah. But Suleiman wouldn't. He would be like, when Mariam is not around, then he would be like, can I hug you now? Oh. Because, you know, because then she comes and she's like, all the love is for me.
She's mine. Yeah.
So
maybe. I think now that she's you know, she's a teenager now, so I think that she's not meeting my needs now, because she doesn't really want to talk to us as long as she's kind of got everything that she needs to facilitate her life. Then the tables have turned a bit. And I think because I've got a younger one as well, and Lily, my youngest, is, you know, Lily, she's very loud, she's pretty much the opposite of Maya in terms of her personality. But Maya always maintains her firstborn status. So she will be the one, like, very silently, she will guide any situation to it being all about her. But, you know, but she's kind of like more of a silent but deadly kind of, she takes that kind of route. But she, you know, we certainly know if she's not happy about something. I think the thing with Maya is the fact that both of my girls, they've got quite high emotional intelligence. So they understand the situation. Yeah. And I think for however we try and stay as close as a family, whatever is happening in terms of maybe perhaps them feeling that they're not getting maybe enough attention on that day, or maybe not enough this or that, is compensated by the fact that we try as much as we can to you know, to be a family and to do things as a family. But also they get it, they understand. So I think that even at the ages that they're at, they would feel a little bit, and they feel for him, they get, like, they understand, they see him and and I've never wanted them to feel sorry for him, but we always say, he, you know, and there's so many things that he needs to work a million times harder than you guys at. So let's just spare a thought in the moment for him in certain situations. So I think that the reason that we don't get that kind of pushback is because they understand, and they support him. So we don't really get that. I think Maya, they all like time on their own, and I love having time with each of them on their own, because I think with any family group, especially when there's three at such different ages, you're never going to find something that everybody's 100% happy with. I think it's just a little bit more exaggerated with the situation that we've got.
I have you, I mean, maybe it's a girl thing, I don't know, I don't want to stereotype. I've noticed that girls are more emotionally
Needy.
that, yes. And
But they're probably more emotionally intelligent. They're more aware.
Yes,
They can verbalize
Yes.
their needs and their,
because when I had the boys and when I had the girl, and I used to think, oh, people just make these things up. But then when I had them, I was like, oh my God, there's something really true about these stereotypes that, my daughter will remind me that, oh, remember 1 week back when you said that to me? I said, can you? And my boys, they're like, they're over and done with, and the moment, and then like they get back, and that's, but I've seen that now Suleiman is, the past few years, he's begun to recognize that Haider is different, and he does certain actions and certain things that, and I told Haider about autism sometime a few years ago, when he was really frustrated, and then Suleiman is older and he started to pick up, and he asked me, Mom, is there something wrong with Haider? And then see him flapping about or talking to himself or laughing or just making silly jokes, and sometimes even in public, and he gets embarrassed. He's like, he gets embarrassed by his brother's behavior. And I tell Suleiman, it's okay, Haider's fine, he's happy, he's just, he's like, oh no, this is so embarrassing, and then he'll just hide, and he would want the moment to be over. And I could see that happening. My youngest is too young to recognize. That's why I was wondering that,
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because Karina, you've got the boys that have got the same set of friends, really, the same group, and obviously if those same set of friends have been with them for quite a long time. But if you're in like a different environment, a new environment, is there a situation, and has there been a situation where there's been an embarrassing time or something that is kind of really been quite poignant, where one of them's come home and said, this is not working for me in this kind of situation, or how can I go somewhere on my own without the other, to meet with friends? Is there been any challenging times for you emotionally? Because for me, many times. Yeah.
Up to now, like nothing has changed. It's just different from when they were little.
I think it gets harder as they get older as well, right?
It is getting harder, absolutely. I think that for me, the worst part, our friends have always been amazing. After we joined school, especially, our friends from school have been, have no words to say. But before that, we used to take him out a lot for kind of occupational therapy, like exercises in parks, open spaces, and like even in the malls. And when we used to go to the malls, this parks that you paid for, to stay there for an hour or so.
Oh yeah, the fun park things,
Those are my nightmares, because there were other moms there, and they were too small to be left alone, and I would never leave Raphael alone anyhow because of his condition. But all the judgment and the eyes and all the comments, and I think I knew I was strong enough to handle the situation, but for Ricardo it was not. For him it was really difficult, because he would always be around Raphael and playing, because these places are small anyhow. We don't have a lot of places to go to, so he would be with his brother, and then he would hear comments like, I have to take my child away from your brother, I don't want my child playing with him, or why do you bring your brother here? Why he's not at home? He should have stayed at home, and things. And then he would come crying to me and say, Mom, that lady there just told this about Raphael, and why people have to be so mean? Why, so he was his. I mean, it was hard for me, but for him it was worse, because I didn't know how to handle the situation.
Right.
So we would come home or in the car and talk about it, and then he said, I don't want to go to that place anymore. Don't take me there anymore.
So what would you, how would you, because obviously in those situations, for me, as soon as I would get in the car, if that happened, because it's happened to me a few times, then I would be trying to console myself and try and talk through it with myself, and being very emotionally upset about it, because I think even when our kids were younger, I think I was still processing everything that came up, that it was just a constant reminder, another reminder of the struggles that we were all having, as a family with not with Noah, but with the autism. So how did you handle that? Like, how did it make you feel? But also, how were you kind of working through it?